કંઈ કર્યું એ બધું તમે મોસ્ટલી C++ માં કરેલું છે. This part from here onwards something is different. Exception handling mechanism is different in Java. આ ટોપિક જાવામાં પણ છે અને પાયથનમાં પણ આવશે. So do it properly. The exception handling in Java is one of the powerful mechanisms to handle the runtime errors so that the normal flow of the application can be maintained. ઘણીવાર આપણા પ્રોગ્રામમાં કોઈ એરર હોય, રન ટાઈમ એરર આવે, કોઈ પણ એરર આવે અને આપણો પ્રોગ્રામ એબનોર્મલી ટર્મિનેટ થઈ જતો હોય છે. Now see, this abnormal termination of program is not good from the programming point of view. Overheads વધી જાય એને લઈને. So programmers developed a mechanism કે જ્યારે કોઈ એવી exceptional situation occur થાય, કોઈ નોર્મલથી થોડી ડિફરન્ટ conditions occur થાય પ્રોગ્રામમાં, then how it can be managed. In Java, exceptions are events that arise due to the occurrence of unexpected behavior in certain statements, disrupting the normal execution of a program. Any abnormal conditions that occur in your program is known as an exception. જે normal programming થી અલગ હોય, which is an unexpected behavior. It may be certain statements, it may be some parts in loops, it can be anything, but which is disrupting the normal function of a program. It can lead to abnormal termination of a program. Then that is known as an exception. Exceptions can arise due to number of reasons. For example, trying to access the 11th element of an array when the array contains only 10 elements. Suppose કે array ની size આપણે 10 આપી હોય તો it can take only 10 elements 0 to 9. હવે તમે a of 10 લખો કે a of 11 લખો, then it will give an error કારણ કે array ની size જ કેટલી છે 10. So an array index out of bounds exception is generated. Division by 0. We all know that when we multiply or divide by 0, the output is always 0. So we do not want that in our program. So જ્યારે division by 0 જેવી error થાય, it generates an arithmetic exception. Accessing a file which is not present. File જે present નથી, આપણે ખોટું file name enter કરીએ છીએ, then it will generate file not found exceptions. Failure of IO operations. Input output operations માં કંઈક fail થાય, or illegal use of null pointer exceptions. આ બધા જાવાના built-in exceptions છે. When we try to do any of this thing, an exception is generated. There are mainly two types of exceptions in Java: checked and unchecked, where error is considered as unchecked exception. The Sun microsystem says that there are three types of exceptions: checked, unchecked, and error. Now see, what is a checked exception? What is unchecked exception? Before doing this, we take this hierarchy. Hierarchy of Java exception class. The supermost class of all the classes in Java is object. જે આપણે પહેલા વાત થઈ. It is the object class. Object no subclass છે throwable. Exceptions ne errors છે. These are the subclasses of throwable class. The two subclasses, exception and error. The supermost class object, object no subclass throwable. Throwable na બે subclasses, exception and error. Now this error class આનું કાંઈ ના થઈ શકે જાવામાં. virtual machine error હોય, assertion error હોય, it is an error which cannot be solved. જે આપણે પ્રોગ્રામમાં આવે છે એ એરર્સની વાત નથી. આપણામાં યુઝ્યુઅલી સિન્ટેક્સ એરર હોય જે આપણે કમ્પાઇલ ટાઈમે સોલ્વ કરતા હોઈએ છીએ. એ પછી રન ટાઈમ એરર આવે જે પ્રોગ્રામને એબનોર્મલી ટર્મિનેટ કરી દે. એ એરરને મેનેજ કરવા માટે એક્સેપ્શન હેન્ડલિંગ મિકેનિઝમ જાવામાં આપેલું છે. એરર ઇઝ અગેન અનધર ક્લાસ ઇન જાવા અને એમાં જે એરર જનરેટ થાય એનું કોઈ મિકેનિઝમ નથી. ઇટ કેનોટ બી હેન્ડલ્ડ. What can be handled is this exception. Exception can be IO exception, SQL exception. It has a subclass runtime exception. Runtime exception na subclasses છે arithmetic exception, null pointer, number format and many other. These runtime exceptions, IO exceptions, SQL exceptions, all this can be managed by exception handling. So the checked exception, the classes that extend throwable class except runtime and error are called checked exception. તો runtime અને error સિવાયના કયા છે? IO exception અને SQL exception. These two are the checked exceptions. For example, IO and SQL. Checked exceptions are checked at compile time. જ્યારે તમે જાવા સી થી પ્રોગ્રામને કમ્પાઇલ કરો આ એક્સેપ્શન્સ ત્યારે you can manage it. Unchecked exceptions. The classes that extend runtime exceptions are called unchecked. These are checked ones, IO and SQL, and these are unchecked exceptions. જે રન ટાઈમ પર થાય, કમ્પાઇલ ટાઈમ પર નહીં, જ્યારે આપણે પ્રોગ્રામ રન કરીએ ત્યારે. Like arithmetic, null pointer, array index out of bound, etc. The unchecked exceptions are not checked at compile time. Rather, they are checked at the runtime. So, checked exception, unchecked, and error. Error is irrecoverable. જેમ કે out of memory, memory ઓછી હોય. Virtual machine નું error આવે, assertion error આવે. Errors cannot be handled in Java. This is the class hierarchy. Remember, you have to draw this figure whenever asked in Java. Checked and unchecked exception. આ question પણ એક્ઝામમાં આવતો હોય છે. Checked exceptions, exceptions which are checked at compile time are called checked exceptions. Exceptions whose handling is not verified during compile time, rather it is verified during runtime, those are called unchecked exceptions. If a method throws a checked exception, then the method must either handle the exception or it must specify the exception using throws keyword. Whereas in unchecked exception, these exceptions are handled at the runtime by JVM after they occurred by using the try and catch block. Examples of checked exception are IO exception, SQL exception, data access, class not found, invocation target, and examples of unchecked are null pointer, array index out of bound, illegal state, etc. For example, you can see unchecked exceptions. We have taken a class where we have a num array which is of integer type and it has 4 values. We are trying to access num of 5. When we try to compile and execute the program, it will give exception in thread main java.lang. It means this array index out of bound exception is part of java.lang. Why? Because we are trying to access the 5th element, right? So this is how we can find out that whether the exception is occurred or not. We keep up to this